All right, get ready to explore the world of Spiritism today.
Oh, it's a fascinating one for sure, full of interesting people and ideas that'll really make you think.
We're talking spirit communication, reincarnation, the whole shebang. By the end of this deep dive, you'll never look at history the same way again.
It really makes you look at things from a whole new perspective.
So who's ready to talk about Emmanuel?
Ah, Emmanuel.
Yep.
Now, there's a spirit whose story has gotten people talking for years, believers and skeptics alike.
This is a spirit who supposedly spoke through the famous Brazilian medium Chico Xavier, right?
That's the one. And get this, our main source for all this is a Wikipedia article.
Really? Wikipedia?
I know, right? But hold on, this isn't just any Wikipedia entry. It's the one about Emmanuel Espirito. And let me tell you, it is packed with fascinating details, more than enough to make your head spin.
All right, you've piqued my curiosity, I have to admit it. So Wikipedia it is.
Okay.
What makes Emmanuel so fascinating anyway? There are a lot of spirits out there. Why him?
Well, it's not just like he's sending cryptic messages from beyond the grave or anything. This spirit allegedly wrote a whole bunch of books through Chico Xavier.
Wait, a whole library of books? Like what kind of books are we talking about?
We're talking historical novels, spiritual guides, even biblical interpretations, all supposedly dictated by this spirit guide, Emmanuel.
Okay, now that's way more than just your average spirit whispering in someone's ear.
Right. But before we get totally lost in Emmanuel's bibliography, let's talk about the man who brought all this to the world. Have you ever heard of Chico Xavier?
Vaguely, yeah. I know he's a big name in Spiritism, but honestly, I couldn't tell you much beyond that. So, refresh my memory. Who was this guy?
All right, picture this. It's 1931, and Chico Xavier is deep in prayer by a lake.
Sound peaceful.
Suddenly, a radiant cross appears right in front of him, and then a figure in priestly robes just materializes out of thin air.
Now that's an entrance.
Talk about making an impression. This figure, who we later learn is Emmanuel, tells Xavier, "We have work to do, 30 books to start."
30 books.
That's right, 30. Talk about setting the bar high.
This is just the beginning, and this spirit is already assigning homework.
That pretty much sums up their relationship. But this was the start of a period where Xavier used automatic writing to churn out all this material, and they credit it all to Emmanuel.
Wow. 30 books is some serious dedication. But what about what's in these books? It's not just grocery lists from the great beyond, right?
Oh, absolutely not. We're talking some serious literary works here. There's a Camino de Luz.
What does that mean?
It means on the path of light. It's a sweeping look at the spiritual evolution of humankind, at least according to Emmanuel. And there's Hadwa Mil Anos, 2,000 years ago. That one dives deep into the Roman Empire during the time of Jesus.
Okay, so we're talking some pretty major historical and religious themes here.
Exactly. And don't forget about Paulo y Esteban, all about Paul the Apostle and St. Stephen. These aren't just random stories. They offer a look at some major moments in history, all seen through the supposed eyes of Emmanuel.
Okay, I have to admit, this is way more interesting than I initially thought. So we've got this spirit guide dictating books about historical and religious giants. But where does reincarnation come into all of this?
Ah, that's where things get really wild. You see, Emmanuel doesn't just dictate books. He claims to have actually lived these past lives, each one adding another layer to his story.
Oh, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Reincarnation is a big part of Spiritism, right?
You got it. And Emmanuel's story is basically a crash course in how it all supposedly works. It's like weaving together this tapestry of interconnected lives across different times and cultures.
Okay, now you've got my attention. So who was Emmanuel in these past lives? Spill the cosmic tea. All right, let's hear it. Who was Emmanuel in these past lives? Don't hold back on the juicy details.
Get this, one of his earliest claimed incarnations goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. He was supposedly a high priest named Seamus.
Wow, a high priest. That's pretty high up there. What was his deal?
He was a high priest in the temple of Amun-Ra, no less.
Okay, now that's impressive. Imagine the kind of secrets and knowledge someone in that position must have had.
Right. It really makes you think about how that life might have influenced his whole spiritual journey.
So he was a big deal in ancient Egypt.
Okay.
What about other lives?
Well, according to Emmanuel, his time in ancient Egypt was all about power,
Yeah.
like wrestling with the responsibility that comes with having knowledge and influence.
Heavy stuff. Okay, so after ancient Egypt, where does he show up next? Give me the highlights.
Hold on tight, because this one's a doozy. He claims to have been a Roman senator, not once, but twice.
Whoa, a Roman senator. Now we're talking. When was this?
First, he was supposedly Publius Lentulus Cornelius during the time of Julius Caesar. And then get this, he claims to have been the same senator again during the life of Jesus.
Wait, so he was around during the time of Jesus. That's a pretty pivotal moment in history.
You can say that again. And this is where things get really interesting, especially when you remember that controversial letter we touched on earlier.
The one supposedly written by Publius Lentulus Cornelius, describing what Jesus looked like.
That's the one. Now, if that letter were legit, it would be huge.
It would be like finding a first-hand account of Jesus from someone who might have actually known him.
Exactly. But here's the catch.
It's a fake, right?
Well, let's just say most historians and academics aren't convinced. They call it a forgery, point out inconsistencies, the whole 9 yards.
So, case closed.
Not so fast. Some spiritists believe it could be authentic. They say it offers a potential glimpse into Jesus' life through someone who might have been there.
Okay, so we've got a possible link to Jesus, a potential eyewitness account, and a whole lot of debate. It's definitely fascinating. But I have to be honest, I'm a little skeptical. Are there any other clues out there? Or are we just supposed to take Emmanuel's word for it?
Well, that's the thing about stories like this, isn't it? Solid proof is hard to come by. How you interpret things often comes down to your own perspective. Some people see the lack of hard evidence and think it's all bogus.
Makes sense.
But others see that same lack of evidence and think, well, maybe we just haven't figured out how to understand the spiritual realm yet.
It's like we need a whole new set of tools to even begin to investigate these kinds of things.
Exactly. But hey, are you ready for a few more of Emmanuel's past lives? Because we've still got a lot more ground to cover.
Oh, absolutely. After ancient Egypt and hanging out with Roman senators, I can't wait to see what other adventures Emmanuel got up to. Lay it on me.
Okay, so from the grandeur of the Roman Senate, his next life takes a bit of a turn. This time, he's supposedly reborn as Nestorius, a Roman slave living in Ephesus.
Whoa, talk about going from one extreme to the other, from senator to slave. That's a huge change.
Right.
Why do you think he would experience such different social positions in different lifetimes?
That's a great question, and it gets right to the heart of Spiritist teachings. They say it's all about growth and learning those tough lessons. You know, we go through all these vastly different lives to develop empathy, understanding, to evolve our souls. Each lifetime is like a new level in the game of life, testing us in new ways.
So each life builds on the last, shaping who we become. Huh. I kind of like that idea.
It's pretty profound when you think about it. And it makes you wonder about the connections between those lives. What if the things he learned as a Roman senator, like about power and responsibility, influenced how he acted as a slave? It's like each life adds a new layer to who we are, making us more well-rounded.
I like that analogy. It's not just about individual lives, but how they all connect to tell a bigger story. All right, you've convinced me. What other past lives did Emmanuel have? What happened next?
Well, from the bustling streets of Ephesus, we fast forward a few centuries to 6th century Gaul.
Gaul, where's that exactly?
Or it's basically modern-day France.
Okay, so what was Emmanuel up to in France?
He was Saint Remigius.
Saint Remigius, the one who converted Clovis to Christianity. That's Saint Remigius.
The one and only. Quite a change from Roman slave.
Yeah, you could say that again. Now we're talking about a major figure in the Catholic Church. Did Emmanuel ever say what it was like to be such an influential religious leader?
You know, that's what makes Emmanuel's story so captivating. He gives us these little glimpses into historical periods and figures that we don't know that much about.
Yeah. It's not every day you get to hear from someone who was supposedly there for all these major events.
Right. Think about it. What could Emmanuel tell us about the spread of Christianity or life in the early church? It's enough to make your head spin.
Okay, I have to admit, that's pretty darn cool. Plus, it makes you wonder, was there a connection between his supposed time as a Roman senator during Jesus' time and later helping shape the religion that came from Jesus' teachings?
Now you're thinking like a spiritist. It's all about making those connections, right? You start to see those threads weaving through lifetimes, creating a bigger picture.
It's like a spiritual echo through time, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so after ancient Egypt, the Roman Empire, early Christianity, where does Emmanuel pop up next? What's the grand finale?
Hold on to your hat because we are jumping ahead a few centuries to 16th century Brazil.
Brazil, wow. What took him there?
This time, he claims to have been the Jesuit priest Manuel de Nobrega, a big name in the early days of Brazil's colonization.
Wow. From ancient Egypt to colonial Brazil, this guy has been everywhere. From high priest to Jesuit priest, talk about a full circle moment. It's pretty wild how all of Emmanuel's lives intersect with these pivotal moments in history, these clashes of culture and belief.
It really makes you think about the role of destiny and free will, right? And how our past lives might influence the present.
My brain is officially fried. Okay, we've talked about reincarnation, spirit communication. We've even got these controversial historical figures. It's a lot to process. But what about that AI analysis we mentioned earlier? Where does that fit into everything?
Ah, yes. Don't forget about that little piece of the puzzle. Remember how Emmanuel supposedly dictated all those books to Chico Xavier?
Yeah, it was like a spiritual ghostwriter situation.
Exactly. So researchers thought, hey, let's use some fancy AI to analyze the writing styles of different spirits channeled by Xavier, Emmanuel included.
Right. They wanted to see if there was a unique voice print for each spirit, right?
You got it. And here's the really interesting part. The AI actually found distinct stylistic differences between the spirits.
So each spirit had their own writing style. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it could mean that these weren't just figments of Xavier's imagination, right? Each spirit, including Emmanuel, had their own distinct voice. It definitely complicates the debate about whether spirit communication is real.
It's like we're using technology to try and understand the spirit world now. That's pretty wild.
It's definitely pushing boundaries. And while it's not exactly foolproof evidence, it definitely raises some questions. Like, are we on the verge of finally being able to understand, maybe even prove, experiences that have always seemed so mysterious?
It's like we're entering a new era where science and spirituality might not be so different after all.
It's an exciting time to be asking these big questions, that's for sure.
This whole deep dive has been amazing. We've covered so much ground reincarnation, spirit communication. We even got a little history lesson in there. From ancient Egypt to colonial Brazil, Emmanuel has certainly led a fascinating, supposed life.
And let's not forget all the questions that are still unanswered. Like, is that letter about Jesus real? And what about that AI analysis? Manuel's story is far from over.
Not even close. I can only imagine what other mysteries and insights are hidden within those channeled books, just waiting for someone to uncover them.
And that's what's so great about these deep dives. It's not about getting all the answers right. It's about opening your mind to new possibilities, new ways of looking at the world. Who knows? You might even start questioning some of your own beliefs along the way.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about long after this episode is over?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think the real beauty of Emmanuel's story, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, is that it forces you to confront those big questions we all have deep down. What happens when we die? Is there more to our lives than meets the eye?
Yeah, the big existential questions.
Exactly. What if we've lived before? Could those past lives be affecting us right now? These aren't easy questions to wrestle with, but they're questions that make us human.
Well said. It reminds us that the most important journeys we can take are often those inward journeys, the ones that make us examine our beliefs about reality itself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And who knows, maybe while exploring those inner depths, we'll stumble upon a truth that resonates with us on a personal level. A truth that, like Emmanuel's story, has the power to completely change how we see ourselves and the world around us.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of Emmanuel, a spirit whose story never fails to fascinate. And as always, we encourage you to keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep diving deeper into the mysteries of our universe. Until next time.